chill wind rolled across the King's Road as dusk bled into night, carrying with it the restless hush of a realm unmoored. Campfires dotted the darkening plain like scattered embers of a giant hearth, each little flame a fragile promise of warmth against the creeping cold. Theon Greyjoy stood apart from the nearest ring of soldiers, arms folded, watching sparks drift up to mingle with the earliest stars. He breathed deep of pine-scented air, tasting the iron tang of imminent frost and the subtler charge of change. Somewhere to the south, beyond 400 miles of forest and field, a boy king clutched at a throne he did not yet know how to rule, while further south, still the old lion of Casterly Rock sharpened his claws upon the memories of every slight the North had ever dealt him. Theon's pulse beat hard in his throat, a drum counting down toward decision. Behind him, the banners of House Stark stirred beneath the rising moon. The gray direwolf on white stretched taut by the breeze as though it too yearned to break from its moorings and race the wind. Robb had ridden through the lines an hour earlier, exchanging quiet words with each lord and sworn sword. He was still little more than a lad, Theon's age, scarcely 200, but on nights like this the camp whispered of him as something older, something carved from the same granite that held Winterfell fast. Even the Greyjohn had fallen silent when Robb spoke, as though the very night paused to listen. Theon felt a peculiar pang of pride at that. Pride that his boyhood companion commanded such respect, and pride, too, that he himself had helped shape this thing the realm had begun to call the young wolf. Footsteps rustled over dead leaves. Robb emerged from behind a canvas pavilion, shadowed by the solitary direwolf that was always half a heartbeat behind him now. Grey Wind's golden eyes reflected firelight, a twin of his master's focused calm. Robb stopped at Theon's shoulder and followed his gaze across the dark plains, saying nothing for a moment. Together, they listened to distant laughter, a muttered oath, the clink of steel upon whetstone. Men preparing for dawn's march found small comforts where they could. 8 at this time tomorrow, Robb said at last. We'll have crossed the Green Fork. Sir Brynden thinks Sir Gregor will strike before nightfall. I'd rather meet him where the ground is ours. You'll have it, Theon replied. We know those fields better than any sellsword Clegane drags into his shadow. When we break them, the whole river will taste Lannister blood. Robb's smile was quick, fierce, then gone. It won't be broken lances that win us this war. We need ships, Theon. We need the sea closed around the rock as tight as a mailed fist. Theon's chest tightened. They had danced around this refrain for a fortnight, each pass drawing them closer to the truth neither quite dared name. The past week's ravens had come unanswered from Pike. His father's silence was as weighty as any threat. Balon Greyjoy bowed to neither wolf nor lion. Yet war had a way of bending men, breaking them, or forging them anew. Theon still remembered the salty-stained decks of his childhood, the creak of oars, the thunder of captains' laughter as they spoke of reaving and red war. He remembered, too, equally well the night he was taken hostage at 10. His mother's frail arms a last tether slipping away beneath the gray stone of Pike's Causeway. Yet for all that, he had found a place among the Starks that felt like belonging, something rarer than gold in a world ruled by blood and oath. If I sail for home, he said slowly, there's no promise Balon will heed me. But if he does, 20 longships could choke the sunset sea from Deepwood Motte clear to Lannisport. 50 would send the Lannisters begging the Lord of Light for succor. And if he does not heed you? Robb asked. The campfire nearest them popped, sending up a burst of sparks. Theon exhaled, watching his breath plume silver. Then I return having tried, and we make war as best we can without a sea at our back. Robb laid a hand on his arm, an intimate gesture for a king, if king he truly was yet. Do more than try, Theon. Remind him you're his blood and heir. Remind him the Lannisters burned his ships at Seaguard and left his dreams smoldering. Tell him the North remembers. Grey Wind growled as though echo, eyes bright with shared purpose. In the morning, Theon said, I'll take a fast horse to White Harbor and board the first cog that can brave the autumn storms. Give me 8 days, 9 at most, and I'll bring back your fleet. Robb's grip tightened once, then fell away. Bring yourself back first. We were boys together, but we'll finish this as men, or die as men, if it comes to that." He turned, melding into the shifting tapestry of torchlight and tent shadows. Theon stood a while longer, absorbing the silence Robb left behind. The direwolf's baying drifted faint across the ridges, a sound that made the hairs at his nape stand upright. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the throb of pike calling, of black waves and blacker stone. Yet over those distant echoes lay the steadier heartbeat of Winterfell's godswood, of wind in the ancient weirwood's face. And that rhythm calmed him. He would go, yes, but on his terms. Sleep was restless when it came, frayed by dreams of drowning halls and bloody snow. At dawn, Theon rode out beneath a red sky. Trailed by 6 men Robb trusted implicitly. Desmond Grell, Jory Castle's cousin, Haley's Hornwood's heir Brannon, and 4 seasoned riders sworn to Sir Roderick. They cut north while the army broke camp southward, splitting like forked water. Along the way, farmers leaned upon fence posts, truth of war blooming in their eyes at the sight of stark colors. Theon's banner flew beside them, a golden kraken upon black silk. Yet more than one village child pointed to it with wide-eyed confusion. 10 years was a lifetime to small folk. Many had never heard the name Greyjoy except as a faint rumor born on autumn gales. They reached White Harbor on the second evening, horses blowing steam under lantern light. Lord Wyman Manderley was too ill to receive them. But his eldest, Sir Wylis, met Theon in the mint-scented entry hall that overlooked the moonlit harbor. Sir Willis spoke with a banker's caution, weighing every favor against a ledger visible only to himself, yet his sea-wolves read the horizon as clearly as any ironborn. They fitted Theon's party with cloak-lined oilskins, pressed upon them a cask of spiced wine for bellying storms, and set them aboard a sleek Myrish cog named the Sea Wren. The winds were mercurial. One day they carved southwest across Mearsmouth Green. The next they beat into gales that sent the Sea Wren's prow smashing through whitecaps. Yet captain and crew understood these waters as a huntsman understands his hounds, keeping the coastline close enough to see the winter bare forests racing by. Theon spent long hours on deck. Gloved hands curled round the rail, letting salt spray kiss his cheeks as though reacquainting kin parted too long. Nights he lay awake beneath swaying beams, listening to the hush of a sea that once felt like mother's voice. When at last the tower of glimmering lights broke the horizon, a single torch above churning surf, marking the strait to Lordsport, Theon's stomach lurched more from memory than wave. He had imagined this homecoming 1,000 times in his exile, striding down Pike's seaweed-hung steps to kneel before his father, presenting Balon with acts of valor so bold, the old Kraken would be forced to acknowledge the son he had gambled away. Yet no heroic deed lay polished in his hands now, only the fragile promise of alliance. Would it be enough? Pride ran thicker than seawater through House Greyjoy. Failing that, it could drown. Dusk cloaked the harbor when their skiff nudged the barnacle-crusted pilings beneath Lordsport's quay. Familiar scents rose around him. Tar, wet rope, fish guts, and smoke from the forge where his Uncle Victarion's captains tempered axe heads. The dockhands who took the Sea Wren's lines eyed the stark cloaks uneasily. A few exchanged low words Theon could not parse above gull cries. He dismissed his escorts to an alehouse, bidding them keep their swords sheathed while on ironborn land, then mounted the rugged path toward Pike, each step echoing inside him like a drum. Torches flickered behind narrow arrow slits as he crossed the first bridge of black basalt. No trumpets announced his arrival. The fortress seemed asleep, indifferent, yet Theon knew eyes tracked him behind those slitted walls. Ironborn were ever watchful. Crossing the second bridge, Rope swung above foaming void. He inhaled brine so sharp it stung. Home, he thought, though the word tasted strange. Balon waited in the salt hall beneath whalebone rafters, seated upon a driftwood throne older than memory. Great iron braziers spat sparks, limning the Lord Reaper's gaunt cheeks and hollow eyes. He wore no crown, only a salt-stiffened cloak, clasped at one shoulder by a rusty kraken wrought of black iron. Theon's uncle Aeron Damfair stood to one side, lean as a spear, seaweed a coiled beard dripping onto bare chest. Victarion loomed near the door in battered plate, one gauntleted hand resting on a reaver's axe taller than a boy of 8. Theon advanced 3 paces, then knelt, cloak pooling around him like spilled ink. "Father, I have come at King Robb Stark's bidding and my own, to speak of war and of opportunity." Balon gave a slow blink, as though roused from some deep, tide-pool dream. "King," he repeated, voice scratchy as gull wings. "Stark whelp names himself king, and he sends a hostage to treat with Balon Greyjoy. I was told he grew bold, but this is boldness of a fool's stripe." Theon swallowed. "I come as your heir, not his hostage. 10 years have passed since I left these shores, yet I serve the realm's best chance at humbling the lions of Casterly Rock. The Lannisters are overextended, fighting on the Trident and in the south. A strike by sea, timed with Robb's advance, would rip the heart from their strength. Victarion shifted, armor groaning. "Sea warfare needs ships." His voice was low thunder. "What does the North Boy offer in return for ours?" "Freedom," Theon said, rising. The word rang off stone. "When the war is done, the young wolf will name the Iron Islands an ally, not a subject. Tribute ends. No more Starks marching fleetless legions to strip us of forges and sons. In exchange we strike the Westerlands from the sea, burn their ports, shatter their trade, and claim what plunder we will. Half Lannister gold would rain upon these floors inside a year." Aeron's damp knuckles whitened upon his driftwood staff. "Gold. Always gold. Have you forgotten the Drowned God's creed? We do not sow coin like plowmen. We reap with axe and fire." "Nuster," Theon met his uncle's ink-dark gaze. "The realm is ripe for reaping. Give me 50 longships, and I'll bring back so much silver to pour over Naga's bones. The waves will never wash it clean." Balon's stare flicked to the stark gray cloak still draped at Theon's shoulders. "You wear wolf pelts, yet speak the Kraken's tongue. Which banner claims you?" "I am Theon of House Greyjoy," he said, tugging the wolf cloak free and letting it fall. Beneath he wore black leather stamped with a subtle kraken. "Blood of Pike, ward of Winterfell. Bridge between rock and snow. There need be no choice if both are served." Silence settled like silt. Flames guttered. Distant waves boomed through cavernous halls. At length Balon leaned back, joints creaking. "You come to me a man full grown. Let us test the truth of that." He raised a hand. A servant scuttled forward bearing a shallow iron basin filled with seawater darkened by wine. "Place your palm in the water, Oathkeeper. Swear by salt and by bone that you will never lift sword against your kin, nor seek to deny the Iron Islands their due, no matter what wolf commands you." "None." Theon stepped forward. The water smelled of copper and deep tides. He plunged his hand to the wrist. It was cold as winter seas, sharper than memory. "By salt and by bone I so swear." Aeron began to chant in the sing-song cadence of old sailors' prayers, invoking the drowned god's realm beneath the waves. Victarion echoed him, voice so rough the words became surf. Balon watched Theon's face, perhaps searching for hesitation. Theon gave him none. When the ritual ended, Balon rose. "You will sail with Victarion on the morrow, make raids along the sunset coast of the rock, and send fear scurrying down Lannister spines. Prove your Tedborn's worth, and you may yet wear a driftwood crown beside mine." For the first time he allowed the ghost of a smile. "But do not think I bend knee to Starks. We ride the storm we choose." Theon's heart hammered. "Ride with me now, and the storm breaks over Casterly Rock, not Pike." Balon lifted a horn of dark ale. The brazier's reflection danced crimson across its rim. "Tomorrow, then. Go, son. See that your wolf friends do not drown waiting for us." Dismissed, Theon retreated from the salt hall. The corridor smelled of kelp and age. Somewhere above, gulls screamed their endless hunger. He found an alcove window and leaned out into mist, gazing at black water whipped moon-silver. All his life he had yearned for this moment. Acknowledged not as hostage, but as heir. The ceiling felt lower than the sky a moment before. The hallways narrower than memory. Yet his veins hummed with a fierce electricity. He thought of Robb, somewhere on a windswept ridge, struggling to hold two armies together with little more than faith in their purpose. Theon would not fail him, nor would he fail the family whose salt he bled. That night sleep eluded him. He walked the narrow bridges linking Pike's towers, and paused above each yawning chasm to taste the wind. On the fourth span, he came upon Asha leaning over the rope rail, a grin crooked as broken driftwood. Moonlight threaded her black hair, and her eyes, so like his, yet sharper, caught the stars. "You swagger like a man who's won his father's favor," she said without turning. Theon joined her. "I've won a promise of ships. For now that's enough." "Promise?" Asha threw back her head, laughter stolen by wind. "Balin promises like the sea promises calm. He gives, then he takes twice in return. Asha, this is our chance. The realm burns and we may set the blaze where it warms us best." She flicked him a sideways glance. "You speak as though you steer the storm. Be wary, brother. Storms have no love for flesh." Yet her words were not unkind. She nudged his shoulder with hers. "Even so, I will watch with both eyes. Victarion is no easy captain, but he respects a blade that draws its own tide. Make yours sing, and the crew will follow." They lingered in companionable silence, gulls wheeling overhead. At length, Asha tapped his arm. "Come." "The cascades open, and the night's young. Tell me of this wolf you love so dearly, and why his war is worth our steel." "That tree." So Theon walked with his sister down steps slick with spray, and as they descended, he spoke of Robb Stark's honor, of Catelyn's quiet strength, of Maester Luwin's patient teachings, and of a pack's unbreakable loyalty forged in Winterfell's snows. Asha listened without mocking laugh or sneer. Perhaps she sensed the truth behind his words, that loyalty was coin as real as gold, and in lean years truer. By dawn, Victarion's war horn bellowed across Lordsport. Ironborn emerged from taverns and hovels, forming columns of rough leather and mail. Along the quay 50 longships rocked in restless harmony. Black Wind, Iron Victory, Sea Bitch, and a dozen more as old as Balin's rebellion. Great black sails unfurled like ravens casting off slumber. Theon walked the planks of his assigned command, the Peregrine, feeling the deck respond beneath his boots as though greeting him by name. Crewmen glanced up, eyes measuring, weighing. He returned each look with calm confidence, letting none see the turmoil beneath. Victarion boarded the Iron Victory last, raised one mailed fist, and a roar answered him, ragged, fierce, hungry. Oars descended in perfect unison. Drums pounded out the beat of 1,000 hearts. Theon stepped to the Peregrine's prow. Salt wind whipped his hair across his eyes. He did not push it aside. Behind him, banners snapped. The Kraken for House Greyjoy. But now beside it, he hoisted a small direwolf standard stitched in gray thread upon black. Some crewmen muttered, yet none dared tear it down. It fluttered defiantly, emblem of a bridge not easily burned. On the high cliffs of Pike, Balin watched their departure, cloak thrashing like storm-torn sail. The sun, rising bloodred, struck his crownless head and made a silhouette of jagged rock. The fleet slipped past the breaker rocks and turned south, oars foaming. The early sea was glass, the horizon wide open, promise painted in broad strokes of crimson and gold. Theon braced one hand upon the carved kraken head at the prow. Ahead lay war, glory, and the Razorothan line where loyalty met ambition. He would ride that line as only a Greyjoy could, with daring enough to confound his enemies and faith enough to honor his friends. Clouds gathered in the distance, pregnant with stormlight, yet to Theon they looked like banners unfurling across the sky. He smiled into the wind, tasting salt and coming battle. Whatever storms rose, he would meet them prow first, and if the gods were listening, the sea would bear him swift back to the young wolf, ships at his stern and victory in his wake. Gain. The Peregrine creaked as she cut through pewter swells, her shields ringing with spray that glittered in the pale light of dawn turned pewter. All around her, sister ships pulsed in and out of fog banks like shadow-cloaked birds of prey, oars churning rhythms that throbbed in a dozen different hearts but beat as one. The coast of the Westerlands lay days ahead, a ragged, gilt-edged promise wrapped in smoke and steel. Yet the crew did not daydream of promised coin. They watched Theon Greyjoy move up and down the decks, checking lashings, kneeling to push splinters back into the iron-bound railing, speaking quiet words to men whose loyalty was still half-wrapped in doubt. He offered neither lofty speeches nor false smiles, only the calm certainty of a man burning from within with cold fire. That ember warmed sailors hungry for a leader who knew each nail and not by name, a captain who was kin yet unafraid to soil his hands beside them. At the fleet's heart the Iron Victory surged ahead, Victarion roaring commands carried on the crash of waves. Asha's black wind slipped between columns whenever change of course demanded sharp reflex. Ships rose and fell past one another in a silent ballet, each knowing precisely the gap it must leave the other, each an extension of the Greyjoy breath. Above them gulls wheeled, keen for the blood that would soon feed tide-tossed bellies. On the fourth evening, a coppery dusk washed the sky. Theon leaned over the starboard rail, scanning horizon and shore with equal vigilance. White cliffs loomed distant and low, scattered with storm-blown evergreens clinging like dark moss to stone. This was Cape Kraken's eastern finger, the last gray tongue of the North's influence before the coast curved southwest into enemy sand. Farther inland slept the first outlying manors of House Liddon, minor bannermen sworn to Casterly Rock. Theon lowered his scope. Campfire sparks winked faint where one such estate squatted like an ink blot in twilight. He traced imaginary roads connecting that manor to the greater trade towns at the Mander's mouth. Those roads would soon choke with refugees, if the Ironborn struck fast and struck hard. A clatter behind signaled footsteps. Ralph the limper, his scarred leg wrapped with oiled cloth, waited for acknowledgement. "Captain," he rasped, voice like shells ground underfoot. "Commander Victarion wants you on Iron Victory. Council of Captains." Theon nodded and strode aft, vaulting in two smooth leaps across the plank bridging Peregrine to her neighbor, a narrow span that rose and dipped with each swell. A greasy wind tugged hair across his eyes. He ignored it. Inside the Iron Victories, steering hut torches spat bright orange glare. Gilding plates hung on cracked beams. Victarion stood with feet braced, helm tucked beneath one ox-thick arm. Beside him, Asha lounged on a pile of coiled rope, sharpening knives as if disinterested. Yet her gaze never left the map nailed to the pillar. Victarion's gauntlet thumped the parchment. "Tomorrow we round Fair Isle. Lannisport lies 2 tides beyond. Clegane's cell sails guard the harbor while the lion's cub still plays King's Hand. We break their spine there." His eyes swept the ring of gathered captains. Asha, Gorold Goodbrother, Carl the Maid, and now Theon. Staggers of 3. Peregrine and Black Wind with Sea Bitch led the north wedge. "Theon, you take the first beach." Den a Whitestall. He did not question the order. Speculation was weakness. "We torch the port and scuttle any half-rig constructed after last winter's equinox. While smoke sinks their courage, Victarion storms the merchant dry docks. Asha drives inland for plunder before the garrison organizes. Then we fall back to sea." Victarion grunted approval. "Timing is all. Word of our raid must reach Casterly Rock no sooner than sunrise the day after, else their ravens outrun us." Gorold spat. "Ravens won't outrun krakens. Ravens fly higher," Asha reminded. Her blade sent a bright sliver of steel gliding across the cabin as she tested its edge. "Better to pluck every black feather at Lannisport before it lifts." Victarion bared teeth. "Do it. No sparing seps or rookery towers. But remember, the boy Greyjoy has personal stakes. His Wolf King expects more than Ash Slick harbors. He expects proof we stand with him. Sink cogs, aye, yet leave something the Starks can use. A blockade." He turned to Theon. "Hold the outer reefs after sacking. Keep 3 ships with you. Any Lannister sails fleeing Crakehull's anchorages will find their decks kissed by Ironborn fire." "Nen. Crakehull's banner is a boar," Theon said. "Boars root near mud but squeal loud when cut. If we cripple their side sea traffic, Word of famine will ride to King's Landing by winter. Victarion's eyes gleamed. Then let them squeal. When council ended, Theon returned to Peregrine with a mind buzzing like struck iron. He called First Mate Steg to ready triple-strength watch. No sailor would whisper of his captain's neglect when tomorrow's dawn cracked blood red. Then he climbed to the prow to breathe salt alone. Far to the east, the horned moon rose. Its reflection shimmered, broken across wave peaks. Memories of Winterfell stirred, nights lying on the godswood moss, both he and Robb staring at a sky not so unlike this one. Pretending direwolves shaped among stars. 10 years had grown them into men but not severed that innocence entirely. Robb's face flickered now in place of the moon, eyes full of direwolf calm, yet ringed by weight of command. Theon vowed silently that his return would carry more than burnt sails. He would bring a living knife pressed to the lion's throat. The night drifted by in the hush of creaking masts. At last, sails bled silver. In the first creamy gray of dawn, Asha's horn sounded 3 short bursts. Ships adjusted formation like chess pieces sliding into check. A breeze hardened, billowing black sails until they snapped taut. Theon barked to row captains. Drums set cadence. Oars punched foam, driving the wedge forward. The coastline crawled nearer. Low cliffs topped with heath, then pockets of sandy coves protected by rocky fingers. Smoke already spiraled behind a distant headland. Asha's signal fire marking first blood. Sea bitch unloaded axemen there, jaws snapping with bloodlust. Theon aimed Peregrine 2 coves north, where the harbor mouth yawned. Within the sheltered inlet red-tiled roofs bunched along curving quays. Lannisport's outlying fishermen dragged nets along tidal flats. Their families haggled over breakfast pots. None expected sails of black until they were nearly upon them. By the time the first cry rose, Peregrine's hull kissed soft sand. Boarding ramps crashed down. Theon drew sword, crab-stepped over rail, and hit beach with a crunch of shingle beneath greaves. The battle unfolded as dream and nightmare interwoven. Fishermen scattered into surf while Theon's bowmen loosed at watchtowers. One tower's bell tolled a discordant clank before its rope parted under iron arrowhead. The bell plunged into quayside crates with a hollow gong. Dock guards rallied, pikes gleaming. Theon advanced through swirling gulls, blade low, blocking one thrust, then driving a quick riposte between a guard's gorget and collarbone. Blood sprayed, salty tang mixing with brine. Behind him, Bormund pike ignited tar-dipped pitch pots, hurling them onto moored carracks. Flames leaped hungry. Timber popped like roasting chestnuts. Smoke thickened until the harbor became a cauldron. Sailors screaming within. One sleek cog attempted to push free on tide, sails half hoisted. Peregrine's starboard catapult hurled a keg of wildfire stolen years before from Dragonstone's black market. The keg smashed mid-deck. A column of green fire roared, turning wood to molten ruin. The cog's mast toppled and crashed into water, steam blasting skyward. Atop the cliffs overlooking town, a Lannister sergeant rallied crossbowmen. They loosed from elevation, quarrels rattling off Theon's raised shield. Up the steep goat track he bounded, 3 ironborn behind him. The path twisted through bramble and scree. Halfway, gray-bearded Sergeant Garrus stepped forward swinging a billhook. Theon ducked, slipped behind, and hamstrung with a backslash. Garrus folded like cut rigging. A minute later, he crested plateau. Small folk huts dotted fields of barley clipped short for winter. The crossbowmen fumbled strings as they saw the Kraken sigil ascending. Fear unstrung more bolts than Theon's sword. Those that flew hissed wide. He closed the distance, parried a desperate slash, rammed pommel under attacker's jaw. Teeth and blood rained. The rest broke, scattering across fields. Theon did not chase. His purpose lay at the rookery tower looming at Plateau's rear. Asha's warning rang in head, pluck every feather. He kicked oak door, bursting into dim interior. Pigeons fluttered wild from cages, stacked 3 tall. 2 lanky maesters in dusty gray turned startled faces. They wore rust-stained chains, novices, not full acolytes. One lifted a wooden cudgel. Theon raised sword but hesitated. Young, these boys hardly older than himself when first taken to Winterfell. Yet war could not abide tender scruples. With flat of blade he cracked one across temple, dropping him. The second vomited. Theon cut the ropes holding cages and let birds whirl free, then shoved a torch into straw bedding. Flames leaped. He emerged onto balcony, choking on smoke and tears-watering eyes. Below, Lannisport blazed like a dying sun. Ironborn poured from alleys, driving prisoners toward the shore. Among them he spotted Asha mounting the steps of a wealthy merchant's manor, robe spattered crimson. She waved a severed banner stave at him in salute before ducking inside. Victarion's longships rammed drydock gates. The sound of shattering oak carried even to Theon's height. Over black roofs, a tower collapsed, belching sparks. Harbor water boiled with staved-in casks of Dornish red. A crimson slick lapped burnt hulls, staining tide like spilled wine at a reveler's wake. By high sun the port's resistance snapped. Garrison Commander Ser Conwy Vesterling rode forth on a mangy palfrey, white rag tied to lance. Victarion accepted his surrender, then demanded 10 barrels of copper slag as ransom for the townsfolk's lives. With trembling hands, Ser Conwy agreed. Victarion granted him 1 hour to fetch goods, then led Greyjoy men back to ships, leaving looters free run. Theon used the lull to regroup his crews. He tallied losses. 9 dead, 15 wounded, negligible given the day's yield of silver, textiles, barrels of pickled crab, and 3 small coastal skiffs captured intact. More importantly, every Raven Tower now smoldered. It would take riders 2 days to reach Casterly Rock, maybe 3. Enough. Evening smudged the sky with red bruises when horns sounded recall. The beach became a hive as raiders carried crates across gangplanks. Some coaxed skittish goats, spoils for winter stews. Theon oversaw stowage, then sought vantage on the quarterdeck. Lannisport glowed behind like a pit of coals. Smoke streaked high, curling south where it might be mistaken for sunset haze. On the Iron Victories, Forecastle Victarion raised a charred plank hammered with the Lannister lion, broken in 2 tynards. Every ship roared approval, banging shields. The fleet swung on the tide, slipping from harbor with the hush of thieves. Once free of shoals, Theon steered Peregrine westward to the reefs, where he must post blockade. He left crew at tiller and climbed to stern castle, unfurling the small direwolf banner again. As its silhouette rippled against burnt ochre sky, he felt a tug, not of loyalty only, but of purpose shared between lands divided by history. Dark fell. Stars winked overhead, cast wild reflections on sea glossy, as hammer-worked obsidian. 2 other ships anchored near. Trident's Kiss and Skyscourge, lean outrunners commanded by Carl Goodbrother and Stig respectively. They would guard passage until orders changed. Theon set first night, watch then descended to cabin. The day's adrenaline drained, leaving muscles stone-heavy. He peeled armor, washing grime from face with stale wine. Yet before he could tumble to bunk, rasping knock rapped door. Stig entered, half-bowed. "Message, Captain." He handed a folded parchment sealed with wax, pressed by a kraken's tentacle. Theon slit seal with thumb. Victarion scrawl. Wolf pup crosses Green Fork tomorrow. Reports speak of Clegane riding to intercept. Our task done. Hold reefs 2 days, then join main body off the crag. Bring word of Lannisport. The seas be ours. He read twice, then tucked note under belt. Theon pictured Robb riding dawn chill, banners streaming, the weight of kingship on young shoulders. A pang of kinship speared him. May the gods, old, new, drowned, carry strength to that ridge. Sleep finally came, dreamless. Dawn ushered low fog. From Crow's Nest lookout shouted, "Sail ho!" Fast shapes slid through gray, outlines squat. Theon's pulse quickened. He mounted ladder 2 steps at a time. Magnified by spyglass, strangers resolved into 3 galleys. Lannister coast traders fleeing with cargo. Perfect. He barked orders. Trident's Kiss loosed first. Wide-bellied outrunners peeled from formation, oars flashing. Theon kept Peregrine angled to block passage. The lead galley attempted to slew away, but crosswinds pinned sails. The Ironborn smashed into her quarter, grapples clanking. Boarders swarmed. Within minutes, the galley's deck became a slaughterhouse. Merchant guards died quickly. Crew begged quarter. Theon's men dragged spoils: sacks of flour, coils of saffron, a chest of silver coils. On to Peregrine. He ordered prisoners stripped of boots and weapons, then set them adrift in dinghy toward coast. He kept one portly overseer alive, binding him to mast. "Your name?" he asked. "Sir Flemon Westerling." The man gasped, blood trickling from scalp where helm once sat. "Kin to Sir Conwy, second cousin. Carry message to the rock when you arrive drifting ashore. Tell Lord Tywin a kraken's tentacles choke his coasts, while a wolf's fangs gnaw his rivers. Tell him the sea belongs to Greyjoy." He cut Flemon's bonds and shoved him into dinghy with 2 sailors, tossed them a cracked oar. As the dinghy bobbed off, Theon felt the rich, hot satisfaction of revenge, delivered like a blade slid beneath mail. That afternoon a storm boiled from west. Black clouds stacked like fortress walls. Theon ordered sails reefed, anchors dropped, lines double knotted. Lightning licked distant horizon, growing closer until thunder shivered hull planks. Rain lashed decks. Peregrine rose and plunged, each plunge slamming crew to knees. Yet the Ironborn sang, drowning fear beneath sea shanty, of 1,000 storms conquered. Midway through the gale, Theon braved the prow. Stinging rain blurred vision yet cleared mind. Storms, Asha had said, have no love for flesh, but he belonged to them too. Birthed on Pike's crags, forged in the north snow, tempered now by black seas. Each element leaving mark, yet not claiming soul. He raised arms, letting water sluice across mail. The storm roared approval. Come morning, sullen clouds parted, leaving the fleet intact, blockade still tight. Theon broke fast on hardtack and salt pork, writing detailed log of previous day's capture. Tonnage seized, prisoners spared, to present Robb. Then he scanned sea again. Nothing but foam-sketched lines running off into haze. The second afternoon, Trident's kiss flagged signal, incoming rider on coastal ridge. Through spyglass, Theon saw a dust column, a single armored horseman bearing Red Lion standard, flanked by 2 outriders. A courier, risked across burnt lands to gauge harbor. Theon smiled. He signaled Sky's courage to circle wide and land beyond ridge, cutting retreat path. Minutes later, the lookout shout. Landed. Dust settled. The courier changed course too late. Ironborn closed from both sides. Captured alive, courier was hauled aboard Peregrine. He wore polished half-plate and a crimson cape singed at hem. Fear fluttered behind his eyes like a trapped bird. "I am Sir Miles Liddon," he declared with brittle pride. "I carry letter of import for Lord Brax at the crag." Theon's mouth twisted. "Another cousin of a cousin? Lannisport breeds more knights than fleas." He removed a dagger, spinning it by tip. "Open your letter." Sir Miles hesitated. Leaks of sweat streaked soot-smudged cheeks. He broke seal, hands shaking, and read aloud. Urgent plea for reinforcement. A fleet of reavers had struck undefended port. Trade through the Banefort Strait imperiled. The parchment ended with order to rally every ship along Westerland's coast and sail north to crush blockade. Theon took letter, folding carefully. "Useful. You will deliver reply." He scribbled on spare scroll. "Burn your ships lest ours burn them first." He sealed with gray wax, pressed kraken pin. Then he escorted Miles to dinghy. "Row south," he advised. "May the Seven guide you, if they care for lions." As Miles vanished into haze, dusk again settled. 2 days had passed since raid. Victarion's timeline dictated regroup. Theon must weigh leaving or risk Tywin's swift reprisal. He paced deck, thinking of Robb, of carts rolling across crossroads and watchers perched in weirwood pines. He pictured Grey Wind growling at the scent of Lannister steel. Decision came as clean cut. Sail. He signaled blockade to weigh anchor. Sails unfurled, catching late breeze. The fleet's trio ghosted from reefs like memories dissolving at dawn, heading south to rendezvous with main body near the crag. 3 leagues out, Stig hailed. "Something on horizon aft, Captain." Theon stared back, distant, black smear trailing smoke. Could be burning wreck. They had left a dozen. Or could be warships. He squinted until eyes ached. The smear grew. Twin masts, large for merchant. Orange glow flickered near waterline. The ship struggled, sails sagging. Perhaps survivors of Lannisport attempted flight and caught fire. Opportunity shouted. He angled Peregrine, signaled others. Approaching, he saw gold scrollwork on prow, Lannister flagship Golden Shadow, Tywin's prized courier vessel, often used by his brothers for swift diplomatic passages. The deck was chaos. Crew dousing fire near stern. Theon raised voice. Boarding pikes. They grappled, surged across amidships. Resistance stiff. Marines with lion helmets fought stubbornly. Steel rang. Timbers shook as catapult rocks thrown by the flames inside broke deck planks. Theon dueled an officer whose gilded breastplate shone like hammered sunset. They traded blows along rail. Theon ducked under a whistling cut, drove shoulder, and sent opponent crashing onto lower deck. A second stroke silenced him. Below, hold revealed trunk after trunk embossed with Lannister seal. Inside lay ingots of gold, likely taxes stripped from crossroads towns to fund war. Theon's breath caught. He summoned mates. Transfer everything. Leave nothing. Fire spread. Boarding parties hauled ingots onto Peregrine until golden stacks threatened stability. At last beams groaned. Golden Shadow's stern collapsed into sea, sparks shooting skyward. Ironborn leapt back, severed lines. The crippled courier listed, sank half gracefully, taking half its gold to the bottom. But half remained. As Peregrine rejoined outrunners, Theon surveyed prize. Weight enough to buy half the North's winter stores. Robb would not simply be grateful. He would know Greyjoy meant more than raider. Alliance forged in blood and gold. Night came starless, moon hidden behind thickening cloud. The three ships glided through dark like silent knives. Theon ordered lanterns hooded. They would slip past Banefort, unseen. Meanwhile, far inland, Robb Stark rose from crude camp cot, bruised by another day's ride. His army had clashed with Sir Gregor at Green Fork midday, arrow clouds thick as locusts. Edmure's outriders flanked by river reeds, archers cutting columns from the west bank. In twilight gray wind harried retreat until Clegane pulled back under covering cavalry. Robb's scouts now reported enemy campfires dwindling. Victory, but narrow. Tomorrow they must cross ford before Tywin's reinforcements. Catelyn knelt by fire, sewing new rents in Robb's bracer. She worried lines into cloth as much as leather. Around them wolves howled, not gray wind alone, but the watchful pack of gathered Northmen echoing triumph. Yet Catelyn's heart weighed heavier with each win. War's cost piled unseen. A raven flapped down, black wings ragged. Maester Galbart, untied message, sealed with kraken and direwolf sigils entwined. He read, eyes widening. He handed to Catelyn, then Robb. By firelight they saw, Lannisport burns. Blockade holds. Gold captured, rejoined soon at Crag. Theon. Robb released breath in a rush. He did it, mother. He truly did. Catelyn's fingers tightened. Pray the Greyjoy fleet remains loyal to that promise. Robb rose, staring into dark where fire's light gave way to night. He will. We were brothers once, we still are. And tomorrow our foes will face not one war, but two converging like blades around their neck. Gray wind padded to his side. Robb rested hand on shaggy head. Sparks spiraled upward, settling among stars. Somewhere at sea, Theon stood upon Peregrine's deck, gazing at same constellations, feeling same chill and hope. 2 more days of steady sailing brought the trio to rendezvous. At dawn the coastline of the crag bloomed golden, fields dotted by sheep that scattered as sails approached. The full fleet, lest those detached raiding Banefort and Casey, waited in loose crescent beyond shallows. Victarion's horn boomed greeting. Ships hailed Theon's arrival with cheers when gold ingots were ferried aboard flagship for division. Victarion clasped Theon's forearm. Rumors already swirl, he rumbled. Lannisters call the sea cursed. Well done. Asha whistled low at the treasure. Enough to line hulls with golden nails. Let's hope wolves never learn Ironborn share spoils by right. Theon met her smirk. Robb needs ships more than coins. I will ask only that he remember who delivered both. Victarion convened captains again. Word from Scout Gull says Lord Tywin rides west from Harrenhal to reinforce his coast. If we strike Crakehall now, we cut them off and open road for Stark spear points descending from the Twins. Then we retreat north to Deepwood, secure stronghold, and overwinter with full granaries. No, Gorold voiced out. Winter is nearer each dawn. Sea winds already bite. We risk being iced out. Victarion silenced him with upraised fist. Risk builds legend. Theon cleared throat. Let me lead lightning strike at the crag while you hammer Crakehall. Without Lannister fleet, their fortresses rely on road line. If we sever both, Tywin's armies starve between us and Robb. Captains murmured. Victarion eyed Theon. Ambition suits you, boy. But the crag's cliffs are high. Lord Brax commands stubborn garrison. Nah. Asha laughed. Stubborn cliffs crumble when you know their hidden goat paths. I learned them years back during raid with Dagmar. I'll guide Peregrine beneath their walls by night. Decision settled like falling axe. At moonrise Peregrine, Black Wind and 2 silent-keeled longships would slip into cove east of castle, scale Seagate, seize inner courtyard. Open landward portcullis. Victarion's ground force would charge through before alarm fully rung. That evening, Theon inspected climbing hooks, tar-blackened for stealth. Ropes knotted at arm-length intervals. He spoke to each raider quietly, promising first pick of spoils, but also cautioning, speed before greed. Invasion hung on blade-thin line. Lannisters must not escape nor messenger outrun tide. Moon crept silver across sea. Mist-shrouded cliffs. The 4 ships glided ghost silent, oars muffled with felt. At base of crags, eastern spur giant stones jutted like teeth. Black Wind anchored behind lee. Peregrine nuzzled against half-collapsed wharf rotted from neglect. Asha led point, barefoot upon slick algae stone. Theon followed, axes strapped across back. Sword at thigh, rope coils slung. 20 men disembarked, boots splashing knee-deep. Above, lantern glimmered once along parapet. Theon held breath until light moved away. They pressed into narrow cleft. Barnacles scraped knuckles. At cliff base iron-bound door, barred ancient postern leading through rock to sea caves once used by smuggler kin centuries past. Asha produced rust-pocked key pried long ago from sailor's corpse. It slid home with soft click. Hinges groaned. Theon winced. Yet surf-masked noise. Passage climbed steep. Salt-crusted steps wound upward into black. At intervals they paused, listening. Drip of water, distant gull cry. No guards. At top of stair they reached wooden grate banded by corroded iron. Slits allowing glimpses into courtyard. Torches flickered around well. Sleepy sentries paced half-hearted circuits. Theon counted 5. They wedged crowbars under grate, heaved. Wood cracked, nails squealed, but tied again masked. They poured into courtyard like flood released. First guard died with crossbow quarrel in throat. Second turned, mouth open. Asha buried throwing axe between brows. By time alarm rang, Ironborn held gatehouse, chains pried from winch. Theon hauled lever, massive doors shuddered then swung. Outside, Victarion's wave crashed through. 300 reavers howling. The castle's defense lasted minutes. Lord Brax fled to keep tower but found Greyjoys already on steps. Surrender came quick. As dawn bled, red banners of House Brax were hauled down, replaced by Kraken and Direwolf, flown side by side. Signal fires lit thrice then doused. Coastal communication claimed by Ironborn. Theon walked battlements, surveying dawn's carnage. Prisoners herded below. Smithies already melting seized silver to fashion rivet nails. He found Victarion at parapet, overlooking courtyard, where gold ingots now stacked beside hogsheads of barley. Victarion's grin was rare, fierce. The war might end before winter's first freeze if this fortune feeds Stark armies. Theon nodded. If Theon reaches Crakehall, he finds no harbor nor ally. He'll wheel south, exposing flank to Robb's outriders. The young wolf closes trap. He thought of Raven message he would send today. Crag taken. Coast secured. Moving to Deepwood end of fortnight. He pictured Robb, reading by lamplight. Exhaustion softened by hope. The shackles once bound by Balin's pride were loosened. That night, after feasting on Brack's larders, Theon stepped onto West Wall alone. Far below, sea sighed against cliff like a giant exhaling. Stars glimmered, clean after rain. Somewhere within castle, a baby wailed then calmed. Life persisted even amid conquest. Footsteps approached. Asha joined him, leaning on parapet. "You're half-wolf truly," she murmured. He smiled sideways. "Half-kraken, half-wolf. Whole fool maybe. Fool who may soon sit on throne of pike beside father," she said, gaze distant. "Balin values results. You've carved them into the coast. Would you begrudge me that?" She shrugged. Wind tugged hair across her lips. "If you rule, rule well. Ironborn are born for boldness, not blind reaving alone." She nudged his shoulder. "Perhaps your wolf blood gives you sense." Silence stretched, companionable again. Torches below flickered. Shadows danced on ramparts. Theon breathed deep. Smoke, brine, night-blooming flowers from gardens spared raising. For first time since leaving Winterfell, he felt weight ease. Not victory yet, but path paved same. Beyond horizon, armies marched, crowns clashed, destinies twisted. But tonight, the sea belonged to Greyjoy, and the land they trod stretched bridge-like toward the north they loved. Soon his steps would carry him back across that bridge, gold and ships at his back. Pride tempered by purpose. Then he would stand beside Robb before blazing hearth or bloody field and say, "I never betrayed you. I never will." He let the wind answer, carrying promise inland, riding currents over ridge and river, until somewhere far away a direwolf lifted muzzle to star-sprent sky and howled approval. "Yeah, and a hush settled over the captured crag in the hour before dawn. That peculiar hush of breath held between worlds, the old life ending, the new unshaped. Torches guttered low along the battlements, burning pockets in the blackness where weary Ironborn leaned upon spears, or huddled close for dice, and muttered boasts. Yet even the most swaggering reaver kept an ear cocked to the wind, for each man sensed that victory was but a single stanza in a longer saga whose meters still remained unwritten. Theon slept little. Instead, he prowled the castle's narrow walkways, hands clasped behind his back, head bowed as if listening for the stones to speak. Each corridor held echoes of conquered lords, faded tapestries bearing the pale blue and red chevron of housebracks, cracked shields depicting boars and lions scratched through by axeheads. He paused before one such relic. A wooden round shield polished by decades of ceremonial guards and inscribed with a proud motto, "By strength and honor we reign." The words had been marred by black char where a torch had toppled. The center bore a soot-edged hole punched clean by a Greyjoy blade. Theon traced the scorched fracture with gloved finger, feeling the faint pulse of his own heart in the blackened grain. Strength and honor. Empty, if staked only on walls and lacquer. A more terrible strength rode now upon the tides, and honor wore two faces, salt and snow. Below the ramparts, the castle courtyard bustled in half-light. Prisoners hunched in ragged lines beside carts loaded with grain, salted pork, and bolts of cloth sorted for shipment north. Ironborn quartermasters scribbled on scraps of vellum, recording tallies with surprising meticulousness. One could not simply plunder for plunder's sake when the North relied on iron coin to fund spears and buy bread for winter armies. Theon watched a surgeon direct half of the flour barrels toward a cellar earmarked with an inked direwolf sigil, and felt the faintest knot inside loosen. So far, his promise to Robb held weight. When he reached the western wall walk, he found Asha standing alone, silhouetted against the hollow glow of dawn. A gull circled above like a pale ghost, its cry tore the fragile silence, then faded as quickly. She did not turn when he joined her, though he knew she heard him. "Still counting their hens, brother?" she asked, voice pitched low, almost gentle. "Or listening for lion claws on the stones?" "Both," he replied. "Theon rides from Harrenhal. If his outriders strike too soon, our hold slips through wet fingers." Asha tilted her head, studying the horizon where the sea met pale sky in a cold silver seam. "Outriders must first pass Robb's scouts. The young wolf knows the ground better than any old lion. And Victarion Reedy's longships in the bay. We can sail in less time than it takes Theon to lift a drinking horn." Theon let the wind push curls from his eyes. "Still, a single misstep leaves us cornered. Balin sent us to reap, not rot." "Mandanshi." Asha's laughter was quiet lightning. "Is that fear I hear? A battle captain who feels no fear is already dead," he said, though a wry smile touched his mouth. "Better to fear enough for caution, but not so much that it freezes the blade." She gave a small, approving nod. Spoken like a lordling raised by wolves. Below, the portcullis chains shrieked. The great gates yawned open. Victarion strode out astride a destrier enormous enough to make lesser horses shy, armor still peppered white from dried sea salt. Behind him thundered columns of reavers bound for scouting runs east and south. Theon and Asha descended stone steps to meet him at the barbican. Victarion reined in, eyeing Theon. "Our riders report smoke on the northern horizon. Small farmsteads sacked by Lannister levies pulling back toward the rock. They torch rather than let us feed. We'll intercept. You will hold the crag with what remains until I return." "Take half my bowmen," Theon offered. "They harry well at distance." "Done." "Done. And keep watch on the sea lane. A single Lannister galley slipping the net could warn the rock too soon." "Duh." Victarion nudged his mount forward, and the ground shook under iron-shod hooves. The reaver companies flowed after him, banner poles fluttering black krakens. Asha vaulted onto her own grim mare and shot Theon a last glance. "Try not to let boredom dull those wolf ears," she said, then joined the column, disappearing behind a swirl of dust, and shouted war cant. Theon remained in the gate's shadow until the dust settled. Alone at last, he inhaled the mingled scents of damp rock and smoldering driftwood, savoring the hush that followed a warband's departure. He turned, striding back into the keep, mind already charting duty rosters. 200 Ironborn left under his command, plus 70-some prisoners. Enough to garrison, but not enough to repel a determined assault. He would have to be fox and hound both. Cunning and vicious, if Tywin's vanguard arrived too soon. First, the ravens. He climbed the spiral stair of the rookery tower the Ironborn had spared for their own use, stepping into a loft thick with the musky odor of cooped birds. A single old maester sat on a three-legged stool, wrists manacled, gray beard tangled with straw dot. When Theon entered, the man looked up with eyes dulled by defeat, yet still tracing the lines of duty. "What will you have me send, lord?" he croaked. "Words of your choosing find wings quicker than men's feet." Theon handed over a short scroll already penned in his tight hand. News of the crag's fall, lists of supplies captured, gold coin weight, and his intentions to fortify coast roads. The seal bore both Kraken and Direwolf again. "Send one raven to Deepwood Motte, one to Moat Cailin. Then send this," he produced a second, narrower strip, "to White Harbor. Lord Wyman keeps fast ships. If he can spare a grain fleet, I want them guided to this coast under dusk sails. The rock will not notice a merchant convoy until holds are empty." "That and the second sea." The maester accepted parchment with trembling fingers, but a flicker of purpose in his gaze. "As you command, lord. Do not think to alter a single word," Theon warned. "I have too few ravens left to waste on deceit." The man nodded, already fastening the message tube to a glossy black bird's leg. The raven croaked irritably, then launched out the open arch, wings buffeting Theon's hair. Watching it dwindle against peach and lavender sky, he felt something loosen inside. Every letter was a tether across distances too vast for sails alone, binding his future to half a dozen hearts beating beyond sight. If one failed, they all might. With communication secure, he set to the walls. Carpenter crews, prisoners pressed into labor under guard. were bracing sections, splintered by the night assault. Ironborn overseers barked at them to hurry, promising ale and leniency once tasks were done. Theon paused to watch a Lannister mason tugging a stone block into place. Sweat cut bright rivulets through caked dust on the man's cheeks. Theon imagined his own hands bound there, forced to repair a keep stolen from his family. Strange how war turned inside out. Captor and captive trading masks at the whim of steel. "Closer," Theon told the mason, pointing where mortar oozed. "That gap will swallow frost and crack the wall come winter. Pack more lime." The mason nodded gratefully, perhaps relieved to receive instruction rather than a boot. Theon moved on. By midday, the sun beat down harsh, turning every helm into a brazen kettle. Theon ordered cold water carried up from the well and distributed to both Ironborn and prisoners. Some reavers grumbled. Men of Pike did not coddle thralls, but he silenced them with a hard stare. "We want this fort to stand, not breed plague," he said. "Dead men haul no grain." An hour later he stalked into the great hall. The once proud banners of Brax, twin stone towers on red, had been ripped down, leaving bare columns and smoke-stained rafters. The smells of last night's feast, venison, turnips, tart apples baked in their skins, still clung, mixing with brass tang of spilled ale. He spotted Sir Daemon Brax, the former lord, shackled near hearth among a cluster of household knights. Man's jaw jutted with impotent rage. "Tend your wounded," Theon advised him. "My leech knows his craft. Keep your strength. You may yet ransom yourself." "But not my home," Daemon spat. "Your home is stone and timber," Theon replied, voice steady. "Stone knows no masters, only those strong enough to wield it. Pray your family learns the lesson before the Starks march through your fields." Daemon looked away, lip curling. Throughout the afternoon, Theon oversaw archery practice on the parapets, arrows thudding into burlap targets shaped like golden lions, a macabre jest that delighted the Ironborn. He drilled crossbow crews until they could reload by feel alone, then inspected cauldrons of crude pitch perched on murder holes above each gate. He kept his mind moving, knowing that to pause was to invite doubt. Still, as shadows lengthened, a prickle of unease stirred. Scouts had reported a dust haze on the eastern road, vanished at dusk. Could be nothing, merchant wagons fleeing the war's hungry mouth. But his instincts, sharpened in the north's wolfish pack, told him a hunter's eyes lay behind that dust. He summoned Harwin Stonehelm, his leanest, shrewdest scout, and dispatched him with 6 light horse to shadow the road overnight. "Watch, but do not strike," Theon cautioned. "If they wear lion red, count them. If they carry torches at midnight, mark the distance." Harwin nodded. "And if they carry no banners, then they're sellswords. Keep twice the distance. A blade bought is a blade that cuts for coin alone. Plenty will change sides when offered gold and safe passage." Harwin saluted, then loped away, boots clacking on cobbles. Theon exhaled. His shoulders felt suddenly weighted. War demanded choices without pause, and each choice felt like flinging bones across a board, whose rules shifted beneath the throw. Night swept over the crag in bruised indigo, heavy with the hush of conspiracies. The garrison settled into uneasy calm, Ironborn singing gutter verses round fires, prisoners whispering behind barred doors. Theon retired to the Lord's Solar commandeered as his quarters. Candlelight guttered across charts spread upon the carved oak table. One map traced the coastline from Casey to Fair Isle, annotated with ink scratches marking reefs, coves, and secret anchorages. Another detailed the river roads Robb now navigated, arrows sketching possible pincers around Lannisport's charred remains. He bent over these parchments, quill poised, mind weaving possibilities. Yet words blurred. Exhaustion pressed like a mailed fist against his skull. He caught himself nodding. Reluctantly, he pushed maps aside and lowered onto the high canopied bed, still bearing the faint lavender scent of its former lady. He left cloak on but unbuckled sword. Steel lay within reach. Sleep claimed him swift, dragging him into blackness where thunder boomed and red banners burned. He woke to a fist hammering the door. Candle stubs had guttered. Moonlight slanted silver across rugs. Theon sprang upright, hand to hilt. "Enter." The door creaked. Halder Flood, a young reaver with freckles like rust spots across his cheeks, hurried in. "Captain, Ryder returns. Urgent. Man." Theon buckled sword, followed Halder down 2 flights of stairs. In the courtyard, torches flared around Harwin's stone helm, mud spattered and wide-eyed. His horse foamed at the bit. "Report," Theon snapped. "Lion banners as feared." Harwin drew a sand-coated dagger and etched lines on the dirt. 200 light horse at least, maybe thrice that behind. They hugged the coast road, scouts ahead. At dusk they camped 3 leagues east. When I left, they were stirring, silent, no fires. They mean to march under moon to take us unawares. Theon's breath hissed. Tywin moved faster than expected. No time for Victarion's return. How long before they reach our outer farms? 2 hours, maybe less. They tread fast. A hush rippled through the gathered men. Somewhere above, a raven croaked. Theon straightened. "Sound the war horn." He turned to Flood. "Rouse every reaver, every prisoner fit to lift a bough. Man the walls, quench every open flame, make the castle appear drowsing. We'll greet them with black mouths." Orders flew. Ironborn scrambled. Torches were doused, pitch cauldrons stoked. Archers knocked heavy-bodied arrows into waxed strings. Prisoner masons were handed stones to hurl. They accepted mutely, desperation wiping hatred for now. Theon climbed the main gate tower. Lamps were capped, leaving only moon's milk to bathe battlements. Far off to the east he saw it. A sinuous line of torchless movement, darker than night. Dust ghosts whirling around hooves. He counted heartbeats. They crept closer. No trumpets, no banners fluttering. Only the faint jingle of harness and the hush of sand. Bold, he thought, riding like wraiths. When they were half a bowshot off, Theon signaled the archers. Flame arrows soared, arcs of orange fire painting black sky. They struck ground ahead of the riders, flaring bright. Shouts rose. So they were closer than hoped. Lannister outriders wheeled, shields lifting. A second volley of iron-tipped shafts followed, plunging into leather and mail. Screams pierced night. "Loose!" Theon roared again. From every wall, a dark hail fell. Horses reared, some riders toppled into dunes. Yet the lion vanguard surged, driven by momentum. Under cover of confusion, a knot of horse dashed toward the gate, aiming to slip close before defenders could pick them off. "Pitch!" Theon bellowed. Cauldrons tipped. Syrupy black fire cascaded through crenels, fanning into a sheet of orange hell as it met night air. The charge wavered, men pulling reins, but too late. Horses shrieked, coats aflame. Riders flailed until merciful arrows silenced them. Still more came. Infantry columns emerging from dark, shields raised into overlapping walls. Theon saw the glitter of spear points and the flash of lion sigils. This was no mere scouting band. This was a full legion. He turned to his sergeant. "Ready the outer postern. When they press the main gate, we ride out the side and harry their flanks. Keep 20 archers on me. Move." "Manner MC." He sprinted down spiral stairs 2 at a time, boots slapping stone. In the yard he seized reins of a rangy gray. Katsia, a Bravosi courser captured at Lannisport, snorted pride. Theon swung up, adjusting shield. Gate timbers thundered, rams pounded. But Greyjoy carpenters had strengthened the beams at dawn. Irony of war's swing. For now it held. A horn note wailed. Theon's company of 26 lancers assembled. Lean men draped in black mail, eyes fever bright. Prisoner archers followed, promised freedom for bravery. The postern gate cracked open onto starlit slope cluttered with thorn. Theon signaled silence. They walked horses single file down a goat path. Below, Lannister infantry pressed the crag's eastern curtain. Fires roared where pitch still burned. To the left, a cluster of siege engineers assembled a ladder cart. "Archers," Theon hissed. "Draw to the basket-weave shields." Night air twanged as bowstrings released. The unsuspecting engineers fell amid shrieks. Ironborn lancers charged, smashing into the flank of footmen pinned by wall arrows. Chaos bloomed. lions turning inward to meet foes on two fronts. Theon swung sword in fierce arcs, cleaving through a knight's visor, then spurring forward to wedge between shield edges. Katya danced left, hooves crushing an ankle. Blood spattered warm across Theon's cheek. He tasted copper and salt, indistinguishable from sea's spray. They hacked, withdrew, circled, struck again, each sweep carving deeper confusion. Lannister horns blew frenzied, trying to consolidate lines. But iron-born archers hammered from walls, and prisoner slingers hurled stones with farmhand might. A tower shield rose before Theon, painted gold and crimson. He feinted high, then thrust low, blades skidding under steel-lipped bite thigh. The soldier collapsed. Theon finished with an overhead smash. Another rushed. He parried, pivoted, let momentum hurl opponent aside. Katya reared, hooves smashing helm. The field stank of fear. From the castle yard came sudden roar. Portcullis raising. Theon glimpsed reinforcements pouring out. Halder and 24 fresh reavers wielding axes. They slammed into struggling lions. Momentum changed again. Gold ranks buckled. Yet at a clarion call pierced uproar, a lion horn deep and resonant. From the darkness beyond a new wave advanced. Heavy infantry clad in plate. Shields interlocked in disciplined phalanx. At their center rode a tall knight beneath a gilded lion helm, cloak of deep red sweeping. Even beneath blood-smeared moonlight, Theon knew that carriage. Sir Adam Marbrand, Tywin's most aggressive commander. Theon's earlier fury chilled. Marbrand brought order where chaos reigned. Lines reformed around him. With a sweeping gesture, he detached a wedge of spearmen toward the postern gap Theon had exploited. If they plugged it, his horsemen would be trapped outside with no retreat. "Fall back," Theon shouted. He whirled Katya, signaling archers to clear route. They loosed a volley, thinning spear line, but still it pressed. Iron-born lancers galloped upslope. Theon brought up rear, shield high as quarrels whistled. A spear grazed Katya's flank. She screamed but kept footing. The riders burst through narrow gate just as portcullis slammed. Spears thudded into timbers inches behind. Inside, courtyard churned with wounded and yelling. The night smelled of ash and sweat and gut. Theon slid from saddle, chest heaving. He thrust sword point into sand to clean gore, then pointed to Halder. "Reinforce the main gate supports. They'll bring rams again." Halder dipped head, sprinted. Theon climbed wall once more. Below, Marbrand's men pulled bodies aside, forming disciplined blocks with ladders ready. Bonnets of red-plumed officers bobbed as orders barked. A siege tower rolled out, creaking on oaken wheels. They had come prepared for swift assault, assuming minimal defense. Now they adapted. Theon's gaze scoured shadows to west, still nothing of Victarion. On the sea, waves glinted under moon, but no sails approached. He swallowed bitter taste. They must hold until dawn at least. He set every archer across western and southern walks, crossbows at east. He deployed boiling water to supplement dwindling pitch. He armed prisoners with captured spears, promising double rations. All-night struggle seesawed. Ladders raised, toppled, raised again. Rams thundered, arrows flickered like angry fireflies. Theon fought where needed, sword arm numbing, lungs aflame with effort. Once he found himself back-to-back with Halder atop the wall, both lashes of sweat and blood blurring sight. Halder laughed through the din, giddy as a drunk. "First time I die will be a good night," he shouted. Theon shoved him away from a spear thrust, retorting, "Not tonight," then cleaved foe in half-helm. Hour blurred into hour. Clouds draped stars. Drizzle began, hissing on torches. Under the soaking damp, pitch fires fizzled. But the rain hampered archers' strings equally. As dawn ghosted into sky, gray light revealed a field carpeted with bodies, Lannister red mingled with iron-born black. But many more lions than krakens. Still, Marbrand had rams massed, tower nearly touching parapet. Theon knew the next push might break them. Exhaustion weighed heavy as wet iron on shoulders. A horn sounded, not lion but kraken. Long rising note from the sea. Theon whirled. Over mist-draped shallows, dark sails arose, Victarion's fleet returning under daybreak gloom. Dozens of longships cut white wakes, drums booming. Joy surged. He leaned over wall shouting, "Black tide!" Ironborn cheered, voices ragged with fatigue yet savage with renewed hope. Marbrand's helm turned seaward. For a heartbeat the assault stuttered. The siege tower halted as drivers gaped. Victarion's flagship, Iron Victory, rammed the beach below the crag's western cliff. Gangplanks slammed down. Asha leapt first, axes whirling. A black wind of fury. Behind her poured 200 fresh reavers, hungry after 3 days' march. They stormed up Goat Path Theon had taken nights before, smashing the Lannister rear. Marbrand tried to wheel forces, but confusion reigned. His embattled vanguard pressed the gate while rear ranks collapsed into screaming knots under Asha's assault. From ships, arrow clouds rained. Theon seized moment. He ordered portcullis lifted. Ironborn surged out in counterattack, hurling themselves at tower and rams. Caught between hammer and anvil, Lannister lines crumpled. The siege tower burst into flames when an oil cask exploded at its base. Splinters founaining. The ram dropped, abandoned. Marbrand fought with desperation, blade carving arcs of red. Theon spurred Katsia forward again, plunging into melee. He met Marbrand midfield, gilded lion helm clashing against salt-stained kraken. Their swords rang. Marbrand was taller, shoulders thick, but fatigue dulled him. Theon ducked a power cut, riposted, sword-scraping pauldron. Marbrand kicked, boot connecting ribs, but armor-absorbed blow. Theon feinted, slashed across Marbrand's forearm where plates overlapped. Blood spurted. Marbrand bellowed, swung overhead. Theon raised shield, the impact numbing his arm, but used momentum to pivot behind, driving point through mail under the arm. Marbrand gasped, sagged. Theon wrenched sword free, crimson spray warm on his face. The Lion Knight fell to knees, visor clanging on mud, then toppled, battle brightness dimming in his eyes. Seeing their commander fall, Lannister survivors faltered. Horn notes broke into discord, retreat shouted. But Asha's tide encircled. Many threw down arms, others fled into dunes only to be cut down by mounted bow. By sunrise true, the field lay quiet, save moans of wounded and caw of carrion birds already gathering. The crag still stood Greyjoy held. Theon stood staring across carnage, mud to ankles, sword limp at side. Every breath felt weighted with iron filings, yet exhilaration danced in his veins. Victarion strode up, helm under arm, beard twined with fresh blood. "A fight worthy of song," he growled, clapping Theon's shoulder so hard knees buckled. "You held. Well done." Theon managed a tired grin. "You arrived just when I began composing my epitaph." "Would been a short verse," Asha said, smiling crookedly. She wiped axe on a lion cloak. "Marbrand dead. Eh?" Theon nodded toward the body already stripped of gilded helm by looters. "His sword will hang above Robb's hall." Victarion regarded the fallen with grim respect. "Tywin's pride bleeds today. That old lion will mourn this cub." He looked east. "If we strike while he reels, we drive him from the coast entirely." Theon's gaze followed. The golden fields beyond were trampled, but harvests yet stood further inland. "Robb closes from the neck. We meet him halfway, bring grain and gold." Victarion grunted. "Balon will want word. And spoils." "Mine." "He will have them," Theon answered. "But first we repay debts." He remembered Maester Luwin's patient lessons, Bran's laughter, Robb's fierce grin, memories stitching two halves of himself into whole. The tide flows both ways. Over the next days the Ironborn buried dead in mass graves dug along the cliffs, marking each with stone cairns facing sea. As was custom even for foes, for a drowned soul belonged to the waters eventually. Prisoners were set to work patching walls, mending gates. The crag became a hive of order, less raider nest than forward bastion. And Theon, newly blooded in defense as well as raid, found men's eyes lingered with respect kindled by the night's stand. One evening, as orange sun sank behind Fair Isle, A lone raven fluttered down bearing Robb's reply. Theon waited until he stood alone on the tower, before breaking seal. "Brother," it began. No title. Just that single word. His chest tightened. "I ride at dawn for Ashmark." Tywin withdraws toward the Golden Tooth. Slower than rumor claimed. "Your victory at the crag frees my flank. Hold there until I reach you. With God's grace we shall shake hands before first snowfall. Your deeds fly swift on wings of song. Winterfell remembers, and I remember. Keep faith. Robb. Denda Wasenor." Theon folded parchment with care, tucking it over his heart. Night's breeze cooled sweat on his brow. Out at sea, waves glimmered copper, then faded into violet. He felt suddenly not caught between worlds, but bridging them. One foot on pikes, unyielding stone. One upon the north snowy earth. Arms outstretched to span the gulf. Perhaps one man could be two things at once, if purpose bound them. Below, Asha's laughter drifted from a torchlit circle where reavers diced for lion loot. Victarion's deep baritone answered, and Halder's freckles flashed in fireglow as he recounted a bawdy jest. Life persisted in the spaces between blades. Theon rested elbows on crenellation, staring south where dusty roads wound toward Casterly Rock. Tywin still breathed, the war yet raged. But tonight, the sea whispered promise. Of kraken coils entwined with direwolf fangs, of kingdoms reshaped not by betrayal, but by a friendship that bent beneath storm, yet never broke. It was a song still half sung, carrying on salt wind toward dawn. He closed his eyes and listened, memorizing each note.